morning, everybody. I can't tell you how happy I am that this event went off so well. The only thing I would change, and if there's any audio engineers out there that are watching, check the link in the description. It sounds a little underwater. I didn't have time to do a sound check. If I did a sound check, it was going to take me 15 or 20 minutes to calibrate everything right, and we were already running a couple of minutes behind, etc. And I wanted, the whole point was the town hall, and yes, I wanted to live stream it. But anyway, if we can get the sound cleaned up, I will repost with a better sound quality on my local channel, just in case you want to do that. And I'll set it up and put it out as an audio broadcast as well, if I can get one that doesn't sound awful, or I'll boost it or something to that effect. I'll do my best with some sound engineering here to get as wide an audience as possible. I want people to be able to listen to this and hear the ideas, because that's the important part. So thank you to everyone who made this happen. It couldn't have happened without a lot of people's help and volunteer time and hard work and constant communication. And man, this coordinating stuff like this is complicated. So I'm glad that it went off without a hitch. It was very smooth. The sound in the room was really good, despite the sound on the audio here being a little underwater. But it was a really neat experience for me to be able to interview Mr. Bernier. It was a neat experience for me to have a conversation with him. And this was totally off the cuff. We had a bit of a conversation on the drive from Cambridge because we were at another event. But it wasn't like I'm going to go through every single question. It was like, this is kind of what I want to touch on, and I want to look forward. I don't want to sit and talk about how terrible Trudeau's been. I've been doing that for the last year. So let's look forward. What can we do to fix this? What's the important bits? And I think we communicated really well. I think that there's a lot of really interesting things in here, and there's a lot of humanity in this. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Really, thank you. So today's show, milk does a body good. You guys remember? Oh my goodness. So my wife told me yesterday, she said, have you heard about Andrew Scheer? Or she made some kind of milk joke that she was expecting a big reaction from me about, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, I know something before you do about Canadian politics. I said, I know, what's going on? And she said, well, let me tell you. CTV News is reporting, she didn't say that, Scheer says he'll review the ideologically driven food guide if he becomes prime minister. Really? This is yesterday, July 18th. Conservative leader that was 2 days ago, and I didn't hear about it. Okay, 2 days ago, so I missed it. I've been busy, guys. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says the new version of Canada's food guide is not based on sound science and will hurt the dairy industry and would be reviewed if he becomes prime minister. He made the remark Wednesday while speaking at the Dairy Farmers of Canada annual meeting in Saskatoon. Quote, absolutely, we're going to review the Canada's food guide, he said in response to a question from a BC dairy producer about his party's food policy. In January, Canada's food guide was updated for the first time in more than a decade. The new version notably de-emphasizes dairy consumption, instead stating that water should be Canadians' beverage of choice. Other changes include a decreased focus on meat and recommendation that plant-based proteins be consumed more often. The guide is taught in schools and is widely used by health professionals. I scroll down a little bit. He told his audience that one of his sons was a picky eater as a young child, leaving him and his wife concerned that the boy would not receive calcium and other essential nutrients until they introduced him to chocolate milk. Quote, I truly do believe that chocolate milk saved my son's life, he said. Wow. Okay. Dietitians and health experts have largely disavowed Scheer's comments. Both the Dietitians of Canada and Canadians Digestive Health Foundation came out in support of the food guide and added the Conservative leader's thoughts on the issue are not based on science. Dr. Yanni Freehoff, a professor at the University of Ottawa who specializes in obesity, told the Canadian press Scheer's comments were, quote, intensely stupid and could have only been made in an attempt to secure political favor. Freehoff added the newest edition of the food guide is the best one the country has produced to date and might be the best such document in the world. I think it's interesting that the CTV is printing this, like the intensely stupid comment, because that's, again, it's an interesting use of language, and it's an interesting use of, remember the professor who said that conservative voters are uneducated? They're pushing for this. It's interesting. That's why I included it. I didn't want to include it to smear Mr. Scheer. I wanted to include it to point it out that the press is looking for comments like this, and they'll find somebody to say this stuff. And again, I think on policy, right, if you had a policy debate that was devoid of all this trash, I think Bernier wins. But we don't need this trash, right? Like we don't need this. We don't need the Canadian public led around by the nose by the media, right? This is this is politicizing to the max, and I think it's inappropriate in our press, personally. Okay, so I wanted to outline why I highlighted that because it's important. Okay. I scroll down. Scheer also vowed to large applause never to force food manufacturers to have front of package labeling on their products. Health Canada is proposing to require all foods that have high sodium, sugar, and or saturated fat content to include warning labels about those items on their customer-facing side of their packaging. The agency has suggested that this could come into effect as soon as 2022, but Scheer said he would scrap it if a Conservative government is elected in October. Quote, I can make those decisions myself. I don't need the government to come along and put a big red sticker on something just because somebody in an office thought that I shouldn't be eating that, he said. So, and he's talking about his own personal choices. So he likes personal responsibility now, but you know. Anyway, I think that's interesting. The whole idea of the chocolate milk saving his son's life, I think that's a little bit hyperbolic. But I mean, you know, politics, you get hyperbolic, I suppose. Okay, I've been talking about the housing crisis for a long time. I've been talking about it having multiple causes, multiple reasons, and well, CBC does a little bit of a look at this as well. CBC reporting, quote, it's next to impossible to pay the rent working full-time for minimum wage, new report calculates. And that just means they did some math. The odds of a minimum wage worker being able to afford a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in just about every city in Canada are next to nil, a new report from the Ottawa-based think tank says. The odds of a minimum wage worker being able to afford a 1 or 2 bedroom. Looking at Statistics Canada on wages from last October and rental information from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the CMHC, of the same month, the Canada Centre for Policy Alternatives, CCPA, crunched the numbers on almost 800 neighborhoods across Canada's 3 dozen largest cities to see how easy it is to find a place to live on minimum wage. The results were bleak. Concern over Canada's housing market tend to focus on homeowners, CCPA economist David McDonald said, but almost 5 million Canadians, about a third of all households, are renters, and they face affordability issues that are just as pressing. Many of these renters, particularly those working at or near minimum wage on fixed incomes or single income households, are at risk of being priced out of modest apartments no matter where they look, he said. In its analysis, the CCPA calculated that the income that minimum wage workers would earn over a standard 40-hour work week, and then cross-referenced the rental data from the CMHC. The report also assumes the rule of thumb that a person should spend no more than 30% of their income on housing to avoid having other financial issues. Theoretically, a minimum wage worker could simply work more hours or drastically cut back on other expenses somehow, but that isn't quite the same thing as making an apartment affordable. Add it all up, and the standard of affordability are looking increasingly out of reach. Leading the way is Vancouver, with a theoretical minimum wage worker where a theoretical minimum wage worker would have to work 84 hours a week to afford the average priced 1-bedroom apartment, or 112 hours a week for a 2-bedroom apartment. Oh, thank you, money laundering and real estate 5% increase Canada-wide. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Gotta love the triads, right? Back to the article. Toronto was not far behind, where the same worker would have had to work 79 hours for a 1-bedroom and a 96-hour work week for a 2-bedroom apartment. Quote, a sole income earner working full-time should be able to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment for their family in a country as rich as Canada, McDonald said. But in most Canadian cities, including Canada's largest metropolitan areas of Toronto and Vancouver, there are no neighborhoods where it isn't possible to afford a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit on a single minimum wage. And I'll leave that there. That's incredibly discouraging and very, very hard to believe. Do you remember when the minimum wage was a little bit less and everything was affordable? Like things made sense with regard to the prices? Now things seem way out of whack. Way out of whack. We have inflation at 2%, which is a hidden tax. We have carbon taxes increasing the price. We have inventory problems on housing, and which means there are no places to rent or purchase because the purchase price of the houses is very expensive, and the rental markets are being eaten up by all sorts of people who are arriving, right? When you increase the population of Canada in certain areas by bringing in immigrants, 330,000 immigrants a year, and over 3 years, that's almost 1 million, right? Then you are necessarily reducing the inventory of available housing for people who grew up in that area, and you're increasing the rent because that's what happens when there is competition, right? Oh, I can charge $1,200 for this. Oh, I can charge $1,600 for this. Oh, I can charge $2,600 for this. Look at what happened to San Francisco. Like the prices there are insane because they can charge it. It's incredible. It's incredible. And we need a plan to fix it. And, well, Mr. Bernier has a plan to fix it. Check out the first link. The link will be in the description, by the way. Last story for this morning. And here we go. CBC News is reporting Butts returns and Trudeau's putting the band back together for October. His participation suggests the Liberals aren't all that worried about rehashing the SNC-Lavalin affair. Among the 60 people who gathered at a downtown Ottawa hotel for a day and a half this month to discuss the Liberal government's campaign for re-election was Gerry Butts, the senior advisor and close friend of Justin Trudeau, who left the Prime Minister's office 5 months ago in the midst of Trudeau's painful spring. In February, Butts stepped away because his presence and the suggestion that he was somehow involved in inappropriately pressuring the former Attorney General threatened to be a drag on the government's ability to pursue its mandate. From the outside, Butts was able to mount his own defense against Joni Wilson-Raybould's accusations. The return of Butts, who is widely credited with helping to define the Trudeau Liberal message and narrative in the first place, might reassure Liberals who value his contribution to the 2015 campaign in the first 3.5 years of the Trudeau government. And I'm going to leave it there because basically they ramble on about all of the Liberal goals and how morally correct they are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just not interested in rehashing all that trash because it's boring and it's has nothing to do with leading the country, in my opinion. Like, really, the things that the Liberals are trying to be divisive and insert their wedges into have it's like the gender budget, right? Like, you look at it and you say, is this are they kidding? Please God, be kidding. And similar to what Mr. Scheer put out with the environmental plan, 60 pages of environmental plan that says nothing, that says absolutely zero. It's incredible, right? Like, they can say a lot. They can fill pages and fill pages and fill pages, but they don't actually say anything. And people are just tired of it. People are just absolutely sick and tired of it. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'm trying a new format. Somebody was asking me to split up my morning video into 2 because it's easier to comment. So I'm going to do the next video right now and then I'm going to upload them both at the same time and we'll see how it works. I don't know because then I'll have to come up with 2 titles. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for watching.